Good morning, Bitcoin. My name is Thomas Hunt, and this is Proof of Work. Proof of Work is a show about the people behind Bitcoin and how they got here. Today, we're joined by Gabriel D Vine. How's it going, Gabriel?
Fantastic. Thank you for asking, Thomas.
And how are you enjoying the cruise so far?
The cruise itself is a strange event with many downsides and upsides. I've been pleasantly surprised with some of the food and the staff, but being trapped on a boat with a bunch of strangers is a strange thing, especially racing fans. It's not a lot of overlap there on the Venn diagram between a Bitcoin conference and racing fans.
I noticed some of them were expert or perhaps professional cruisers, where we got here, midday on the first day. They seem to have gotten here early. They were already drinking in the pool when we came in, and they really seem to understand this cruise much more than I think I ever will.
Yeah, you go to their cabin and they've got for power strips and bottled water and like little things and paper clips and everything that you could possibly need that you could never get on the ship normally.
It's amazing. They're very well prepared. But we're going to go ahead and start with everyone's most favorite and familiar question. What was your first computer?
My first computer was the Commodore VIC-20, 5K. Got it back in 1980, I think. And the data storage on that was a 1/4-inch analog tape cassette player.
Cassette tape, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think actually Adam Back was talking about cassette storage.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, a lot of guys have told me about that. It was a little bit before my time. Yeah. I had a floppy disk and it was still floppy, but no, not a cassette tape. And what did you do with the computer?
Well, it had a DOS on the boot, and so we actually started with the VIC-20 to learn BASIC, my brother and I, and it was all uppercase, and we were writing, and actually at one point we wrote a program that was long enough to use up all 5K. And it's not that many lines. 5K, gives you a bit of space, but it's not like thousands of lines or anything. I think it was maybe 60 or 70 lines of code, and that was it for the RAM.
I remember Bill Gates said something like 640K is all you'll ever need. Base memory.
That might have been true for as long as 2 or 3 months after he said it.
I know. Happened so fast. So after you got to start programming with BASIC on your VIC-20, did you stick with computers? Were you always using them?
No. I felt a little bit annoyed by the heavily logical and left brain sort of basis for programming. And I didn't really have that much of a knack for it, even though I took a couple more courses in summer school and stuff as a kid. But I mean, yes, we got an Apple IIe. Nice. 3 years later, and that was a big deal, and we were constantly playing games on that. So yes, I was definitely using computers as soon as we got the Apple IIe constantly when I was a kid, and was very familiar. We did all sorts of illegal things when I was a kid. We were freaking, which is this is a terrible admission of crimes that my brother and I committed when we were minors. We
no longer admissible. Well past the statute of limitations.
Thank you, statute of limitations.
So,
yes,
of course.
So we were freaking. So that is when you set up a bot to call. So we had a bot on the computer that would call with the modem and connect to the phone company and just brute force. Phone numbers for long distance passwords. That's called freaking with a PH. And so we would just run the bot all night and wake up with our printer, and it would print out any one that succeeded, and we'd have like 2 or 3 codes after the 11 hours or whatever. And then we could use those long distance codes to actually call BBSs all over the US and Canada. BBS is bulletin board service. It's like the predecessor to the website, and so it's like a non-internet. It's like a net.
You'd call into a single computer. Yeah. You'd call into one person's computer, and you'd look at their files, and if you were really lucky, it'd be a multi-line BBS. Yeah. Maybe somebody else was also online, and you could chat with that one other person, or if you're really lucky, it'd be a 6 or 7 line BBSs, which were party chats. Yeah. And this was the before AOL chat. Yeah. You would log in, and this is why I learned to type. Is the BBSs. Right. I went to the typing class at school, but I got all my practice at home typing to people on BBSs.
Wow. Our first modem was only 300 baud. So that's actually slower than you can read. So the characters are coming in, you're like, you're like waiting to read it, but it's slower than you can read. Then when we upgraded to 1200, it was overwhelming because I was like, and not all the software would let you stop it, so it would be zipping by a little faster than I could read at age 11 or whatever, and that was actually tough on the other end. But email was definitely a thing, right? Because that had already been invented in the 70s and by the 80s with the BBSs. Because usually you were it was only possible to serve one.
Yeah, you could mail people that would log into the BBS
later.
So if your friend logged in later, they could get the mail from you. Yeah. But there wasn't really a connection between the BBSs at first, anyway.
Yeah.
Later on, there were BBSs where you could go through to the internet, or the email was like linked into the system, and that you could email through the BBS. Things like that.
That was way later.
That was way later. But yeah, you were a little bit earlier than me there with the 300 and the 1200 baud. My first one was a 2400 baud.
Oh, that's very functional. Then you're talking about downloading games and stuff.
Oh, we certainly were. But then I remember the day we got the 14.4 modem, and it was 7 times faster.
Right.
And it was so amazing. And just exactly what you're saying, the text used to scroll slowly. Now it goes fast.
Yeah.
And around the same time, we got it's really hard to say now, a 300 megabyte hard drive, which cost us $300 at Costco.
This is great. We're going through all the old gear.
And I was like, I will never fill this.
Oh,
like
my
this,
God.
I will never fill 300 megs. And I hooked it up to my 14.4 modem, and I went out to my BBS friends, and we did our damn best to fill that thing. And boy, sure we did. I was on the phone all day long. I was downloading. I was getting JPEGs and GIFs and maybe some movies and, like you say, video games and Doom and Quake and all these kind of things.
The storage on the Apple IIe was, of course, 5 1/4-inch floppy disks, 64K each side, and that I don't know how it happened, but my dad decided we were getting a hard drive, which a hard drive was like something you had at your office. It was like nothing you had at home. So we went to a cool computer convention that they had every year downtown in LA, and we went and got a 5 megabyte drive, and the thing was this big.
5 megs.
5 megabyte.
My God.
And once again, it was the same thing where we're like, 5 megs, man. Maybe we should get a 3, because like, how are we going to do
what are you going to do?
megs?
Fill 5.
But actually, we opened that thing up, and there was a ton of empty space. So it actually wasn't this much. You could probably store 60 or 70 megs back then, but there was mostly air inside that thing.
Well, I remember all the time they used to they would sell you the same hard drive, and they would just adjust the amount of storage on the hard drive, and it would be physically the same, and there'd be like a little chip or something.
Well, that's
and
the
they
form
do that
factor.
for a lot of things.
Yeah,
they're just like
it's still the same today. 3.5-inch spinning drives are like starting to almost become old fashioned. The cheap spinning drives.
Sure.
It's like,
you got to get an SSD.
Yeah, exactly.
So after you continued using the computer but didn't go into programming, did you continue to study them in schools, or did you go a different direction?
School? No. I just took I think I took one summer school course. Well, we were not only freaking and calling the BBSs, but we would get pirated games. The whole point is to get more games. And so we went to get pirated games, but then, of course, you need to, unlike torrent today, where you build up, there's like websites that have the tracker websites have the torrents, and they share the files with each other, and you get a bit of reputation on some of these sites, and it helps you to get more, and you work on your upload to download ratio and try to contribute enough so that other people. Back then it was kind of similar, although it was totally in a way more more decentralized in a way, because everybody had their own little server, and they weren't hardly any of them were connected, and you would just kind of share. It was like sharing URLs 10 years later. You just shared phone numbers of just random BBS.
Well, and the part that I really found frustrated, where I thought you were going to go with that, is if you got disconnected in your file transfer, it was over, and you had to start again.
Oh yeah, there's no resume.
There's no pause. There's no resume.
No.
And oftentimes you would get interrupted in your file transfer because your parents picked up the phone.
Right. Well, yes. Our parents were very cool and got us a third line.
Oh,
the 1056 line. Now you can hack me.
I wanted a second line so badly. It was so expensive for a kid to pay another phone bill, and then of course the possibility of making long distance charges or something would be awful.
Oh, my parents were so generous with us.
Oh,
so
incredibly
cool.
lucky, because I was always.
That
it was always a struggle.
To do all that hacking.
It was
like, we got this line, so now we can
you have a line. You can just do it all the time. Yeah.
So we were getting the games, and then we set up our own BBS.
Nice, me too. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we did Cloud9 in case the feds have that in their files, and we were basically serving pirated games on there, and it was like a really what do you call it? Turnkey. Low quality turnkey BBS software that we were using with obviously known backdoors.
I'm thinking now, was it Major? Was it
no?
Gosh, I'm trying to think of the boards because I used to know all the names.
Right.
And I mean, gosh, one
Definitely
time
not Major,
we bought the software. We paid $300. We bought the BBS software.
Oh no! Of course we pirated this. So obviously, it's a pirated
we had multiple
website.
pirated versions, but then we decided for whatever reason to buy the license. But
but ours had the vulnerabilities because you couldn't. It wasn't like updating on the web for your software. It was just random. So obviously. Everyone already knew the vulnerability, so we got hacked. Like,
oh wow.
Yeah, so I got familiar with that idea of like vulnerability and cyber security at a young age, even though I wasn't doing any hacking. I wasn't on the command line. I wasn't programming really, but it was still very hacker culture-y right when that was all happening in the classic cyberpunk era.
That's amazing. You had penetrators inside your computer. Like that's like for me that's like War Games or one of those movies you'd watch as a kid where you like dream about hacking and then you find out that hacking's not at all like that and it's not fun like in the movies. But
But my brother, I mean, he deserves a lot of credit for spearheading all that. He's 3 years older than me, so he was the guy that was just like
nice
putting
leading the way.
Yeah. And I was like, we can do what and get free games and do what? Yeah, let's do it. How do you use the Freak software? Got it. Yeah, let's do it. Like I was so down.
That's great to have a mentor and a person in your family that can help you out. I think a lot of people need that.
Yeah, he was like the spark of anarchist influence on me back then. That was great.
Yeah, one of the things I used to do on the BBS is we had very few people calling in, but if somebody would call in, and I learned a lot about sysops and people that run systems. We would watch them. We would say what they're going to do, and you could have a modem where you could see the screen, and then we would read their email, and then we would do all these other things, and we had no responsibilities. We were kids. We were running this service for nothing, for no anything. It wasn't any kind of contracts. Yeah, just for fun, and it was fun to invade everyone's privacy. I can see why it's so attractive to other sysadministrators, and that's why I remember when Facebook came out, and I was just so kind of disgusted that everyone was willing to give these centralized database administrators access to all their stuff.
They hadn't run those BBSs back in the 80s and 90s.
They didn't know. I mean, I knew if I was instantly corrupted and my friend who ran it with me was instantly corrupted and we just had a great old time messing with people, and you could disconnect them or you could get there was a great command message from sysop. And it would take up half your screen, and whatever you were doing, you would have to start chatting with the sysop. You might be there to download games, you might be there to mail somebody on the board, which you think is important, and the sysop would be like, "I am the god of the system. Yeah. I want to talk to you."
Yeah, here's your chat prompt. Every key will go there.
Every key goes there. Choice. The menus are gone.
You can do that or disconnect.
It's over. That's it. The only choices you had. Yeah. But it was a wonderful time back in the BBS days.
Disagree. Things are much better now. Everything's all connected, and we can get so much more done. It's extremely efficient. It's amazing.
It's funny though. I have all these skills.
Duct tape,
I have all these skills. I keep waiting to come back. Like eventually, they'll need a BBS administrator. Eventually, they'll need someone that knows DOS 6.22 and all these kind of things. It's going to be it's circular, right? I'm keeping those SCSI cables for a reason.
Oh yeah, Thomas. I'm sure those will come in real handy in the museum.
And parallel ports for my printers.
Oh god.
But so after you were into the freaking and the hacking, later on, I'm sure probably later, how did you learn about Bitcoin? Was it in any way connected to your earlier computer experiences? Or?
Well, indirectly for sure. I've been following technology trends for a long time and kind of gradually developed it into an amateur futurologist, I guess you could say. I'm very into science fiction, which is the imaginative side, and I'm also very into just generally predictions.
Well, and just for me, it's been great to see science fiction come alive in our lifetime. I used to watch Star Trek, and now it's gone now, but it's broken. But now I have a communicator. I mean, I have this fantastic tricorder. I can learn all this information. I can take pictures.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it only works on Earth, but it is the exact same thing.
Far.
Yeah, except way better.
Yeah,
more information than could ever be in the Hitchhiker's Guide. So science fiction, but also straight up predictions. Omni magazine in the 80s and Wired when it first came out. And paying attention to all the trends in culture, music, and technology. And of course, the rise of the web. I was a very young adult when that all started to really happen in the 90s. And just been following technology closely. I did... Actually, the timing is pretty poor for me with Bitcoin because I have a feeling I would have gotten into it several years earlier. But I actually kind of got sick of technology a bit right when Bitcoin came out and started making a lot more music again after a bit of a break. And then I didn't start to get back into discussing tech until just before the Snowden stuff came out, because I got a feeling, okay, well, AI is coming along a bit now, 2011 and 12, and I did hear about Bitcoin through my buddy's girlfriend, who you've met, my friend now. And his girlfriend at the time was this very quirky chick, and she was like a sculptress. And working, just such an unusual person, and we just considered her this weirdo. And then she's like, Bitcoin it's like a really big deal. You guys should look into it. But she was so introverted though, and she definitely didn't like win us over. We're like, huh? And also, I knew nothing about monetary systems, Austrian economics, any economics really. So I didn't have anything to slot it into as far as like, digital money. And it wasn't until 6 months later, when Cyprus happened in March of 2013, that I was like, what? Because when she mentioned it, I was like, what's that? Wikipedia, cryptographic, what? Immediately, the article just completely blocked in there. They're like, just check out the white paper. And actually, the white paper, it was cool until block. This word block totally threw me off. And it was like a term that Satoshi Nakamoto was using from previous digital money experiments where they all use this word. Block is just a group of transactions, but he didn't really define it in the white paper or like reference anything. And I'm like, what the heck's a block? It's not the same as a block on a disk. So what the heck? What is he talking about? And then I just no. So finally in March, I was like, what's this asymmetric cryptography again? I've used this SSH keys, but what is that? Right, dual key, got it. And then I was like, wait, that makes sense. And then I looked up the Austrian economics Wikipedia article and read 4 paragraphs and was like, that makes perfect sense. And then it's actually scarce. Cool. And then I went straight down the water slide of the rabbit hole and spent 2 weeks, didn't eat very much. I had just quit a contract at that time and spent 14 days just finding anything I could find on the web that wasn't ugly Reddit. Especially back then, Reddit looked so bad that I was just like, I can't read that much Reddit.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin Talk and just anything I could scour, there was hardly any content. And then I found your video like right then, because you had just started doing it, and I saw like your 3rd video right when it came out.
Yeah. The Cyprus event was a huge event for me because even though I wasn't like heavily into Bitcoin at the time, I knew about it. But what it did is it brought together so many of our ideas of what Bitcoin could do. And while I don't think that the Cyprus people actually had access to Bitcoin ATMs or the ability to get out of their money, suddenly it seemed to me like the whole world saw the Cyprus situation where, first of all, Cyprus had a lot of foreign money in their bank accounts. Some of it might have been drug cartel money, and the country needed money. So they're like, well, everyone who has a bank account is going to take a 10% haircut. And we're just going to take 10% out of your bank account, 10% out of the cartel bank account, 10% out of all these bank accounts. And this put the whole economy in a panic, and they had ATMs where it shut down. You could only get $100 a day. People couldn't access their money. And this kind of solidified the point and the reason for Bitcoin, that if the Cyprus people had access to Bitcoin in a way that I hope in the next future some of these economic collapses will have access to it, they could have gotten their money out. The individuals could have been fine. The government, they're doomed. They're going to have to do some Keynesian magic or reprint the money or whatever they're going to do to set Humpty Dumpty back together again. But the individuals now suddenly had this sovereign money, this possibility with Bitcoin to not go down with the ship. So I think that turned a lot of people on.
Yeah, I agree with you that it was more the idea, and there was a speculation that this idea had a use case for sure in the world, and nobody was actually doing it yet. But just the fact that it existed and could actually one day fulfill that was enough to cause a euphoric blow off.
And that drove the price to $300 and such madness. And then I think it backed down to $75 again. And even that was quite a crazy wild ride.
Yeah, that was right when I was like learning as much. I was like, yeah, it's totally volatile. This is crazy. But why is it volatile? Oh, because it's freely traded, blah, 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 all the different angles I could get on it. And it was so much more scarce back then. There were about 1 to 2 articles a week in media in general on the web that you could find.
I know on Mad Bitcoins, if a bakery in Hungary started accepting Bitcoin, we would cover it as our top story the next day. Any mention of Bitcoin in the news anywhere was the highlight of our week. And even when I started, I would do 3 articles a day, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to keep this up. There's not going to be 3 articles a day.
There weren't at first.
At first, no, we were stretching a lot too. I mean, but it's so funny to see it just take off, and that so many more people are into it now, and companies and businesses, and that was the big flag for me, is that in 2013 after Cyprus, I looked at the businesses in this space, and everyone hates BitPay now, and they're not crazy about Coinbase, but at the time, these were amazing businesses because they built themselves around Bitcoin and they made Bitcoin usable. Before I saw that, I'd seen it on the command line, and I was like, all right, guys, no normal people are going to use this. You're not going to be able to trick them into buying this money. I could even tell that the early adopters would be ridiculously rich if it worked. And unfortunately, I wasn't one. But this changed everything when you had Coinbase and you had this easy login, and when you had BitPay and businesses could accept it, and then sadly auto-converted into fiat. But again, they're a business. They have to sell products. They have to buy new products to sell. Bitcoin wasn't ready for that yet. The people that make the widgets don't take Bitcoin.
That's right. So that's how it happened for me.
Yeah. And so how did you end up on the World Crypto Network? You're watching Mad Bitcoins. You're in the audience.
Yes.
You're thinking, I could do this? What are you thinking?
No. I could never be a Mad Bitcoins. Aww. Even though as we discussed the other day, Mad Bitcoins, Mad Bitcoins, Mad Bitcoins.
That's it.
I always wanted to say that.
So you did the Bitcoin group intro one time too, I think.
Yes, I also love the Bitcoin group intro. So yeah, but it was really the Bitcoin group that inspired me to come online. Nice. I knew that because Bitcoins is a specialty show, and I was just an extremely enthusiastic audience member. But once the Bitcoin panel discussion show started, that was next level. That was like, okay, this is cool, and you had Chris on there too, Chris Ellis and Blake Anderson.
Yeah.
Very knowledgeable guys. Theo, just really high level discussions
and philosophy and concepts behind the concepts, and a lot of times hanging out with those guys, they'll mention something that I don't know, and I mean I can learn something.
Yeah,
that's really good.
Of course,
love it when that happens.
I learned a ton from all those episodes, and you did a live episode with Andreas Antonopoulos.
Yeah.
Must have been Mount Gox possibly related.
Sure. Yeah, we did a big. I think that's when we started the World Crypto Network. Is that the Mount Gox? Because the Bitcoin group had its own channel for a while. Mad Bitcoins had its own channel, and then I wanted someone who wasn't me to talk about crypto. That was the general goal behind the network, because I talked about it a lot at that point, and I'm sure I have now, but we needed other voices.
Yeah.
And that's, where the World Crypto Network came in.
Yeah, and you guys did this epic live show. It was like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And, but it was so powerful at the time, because when Gox crashed and there was all this lost money, everybody was panicking and everyone was trying to find their footing and what's the basis and where's this going? And Chris and Andreas and you framed things so amazingly and just helped the community. We say community, but helped the viewers, whoever that was.
Yeah.
It was like a not only feeling of belonging, but also just a stability. Like, okay, everyone's all thinking about this too, and it's a big deal, and we're all paying attention, and it's really important to come together and think about it. And philosophically, just to hear so much truth, about abuses of power, and hear people speak eloquently and critique authorities in the world was so inspiring to me. And then I kept listening and started to get a lot of ideas of my own. I'd be in the shower listening to the show that I couldn't catch it, so it's 2.5 hours later, and I'm catching it, and I'm listening to you guys, and like, wait, who's gonna mention this thing? This is what I've been, because I saw that tweet, and I'm like, yeah, that is what's it. Nobody mentioned it. Oh no! And I'm yelling at the soap, and and that kept happening, where I was like, okay, I think maybe they might dig my perspective.
Yeah.
So so then I did a couple of test appearances, and then you're like, yeah, sure, come on. You were super chill about it. And I was like, this is great. You just wanted to see that I could talk.
Yeah,
first.
yeah. I always try to put people on like a Bitcoin talk show, or we used to have Vortex have kind of audition the new people kind of thing, and just
that's what we did.
Give him a chance. You know, oh yeah, he was great. He did a really good job bringing in the new people. I think he was using some kind of chat Blab. That was it. I keep saying Gab, but yeah, Blab.
That was Blab, and which doesn't exist anymore. And we had Ansel Lindner on. Like the second show that I did with him, and then you had me on, and we just totally vibed, and it was so satisfying for me, and it was exactly what I was hoping it would be, which was just hanging out, having a good chat, and then when those things occurred to me, jumping in and actually interjecting the stuff and hoping to flesh out some perspectives a bit more.
Well, and I love that you were able to go from watching the show and yelling at it to being on the show.
And yelling at my own camera.
And then just a lot of people, they tell me the same thing. They'll watch the show and talk back to it, and that they want to be on. And I remember the thing that really inspired me back in the days, I saw Derek J. and I saw Davi, and they were talking back and forth, and they were kind of pretending like it was a talk show, and they were on YouTube. And I was like, that's so cool. You can have a talk show on YouTube, and these are Bitcoin guys. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, can I do that? Am I too old to do that? You know, I'm not the young YouTuber, but, you know, we do what we do.
And you're like, McLaughlin's been doing it for decades. He can do it.
Oh, if he can do it, I can do it. And I was like, I'll copy some existing shows and I'll make it like this. And then, and we did it, and we just kept doing it. And it's been just a lot of fun. And I think we've really helped spread the word about Bitcoin, and met a lot of great people, and inspired people to do shows, and inspired other people to do shows. And certainly Ugly has been just in my ear all weekend here, and just how thrilled he was by Mad Bitcoins and how it really inspired him. And to see that, and then to see all these other people who even tangentially might have been inspired by someone who was inspired, So it's really rewarding to do that, and it's been a really great journey so far.
It sure has. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Gabriel, for the interview.
Awesome.